Hello and welcome to the CAPE podcast. CAPE standing for the Child Abuse Prevention and Education Podcast. My name is Kristi and I am an ex-West Australian police officer who spent 10 years with the police where I was trained as a specialist child interviewer and a child abuse detective. This podcast is all about sharing what I learnt, saw and knew whilst investigating child sexual abuse in the police force. It is also about sharing the knowledge that I gained in that time that helped me with my own parenting of my then 2-year-old daughter. My mission is to help share my knowledge and to help you in your role as parents to keep your kids safe, along with guest experts in the field of child abuse prevention and education, both in person and online. Thank you so much for joining in on the fight to prevent child sexual abuse. Your kids will thank you for it. Hello and welcome back to the Operation Cape podcast, a podcast about child abuse prevention and education for parents. I'm with the amazing Jayneen Sanders, who is the founder of Educate to Empower, along with her husband, and has been writing books about, well, everything that we talk about in this podcast for the last about 12 years. Is that right, Jayneen?
Yeah, that would be right. Yep.
And I've got a couple of your books, and I've known about your books for a while now. Unfortunately, I didn't know about your books when my daughter was younger. If I had I would have had the whole collection because they are amazing. You know, they are what we've needed for a long time, and I'd love to hear more about your journey into writing them. So thank you so much for being here, Jayneen.
Yes, that's okay. And you can call me Jay. That's fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Jay's fine. Okay, so back in about 2010, we have 3 daughters, and earlier in my career I have been a teacher, but I've also been in publishing.
Yeah.
And when I was a young woman, we published a book called Keeping Children Safe by Dr. Frida Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, gee, if ever I have kids, I'm going to teach them this. This is really important stuff. It was sort of the protective behaviors that was going on in the 80s.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I had the 3 daughters and I did teach them, you know, what we call body safety these days. And so I thought, you know, it's just really important. So I'm going to go to the school where the kids go, and I'm going to bring it up at school council that we need to be doing more teaching, you know, body safety. And every time I bring it up, they would leave me to the end of the agenda, or people get really restless and sort of shuffle around in their chairs and get very, you know, unsettled about the topic. So I thought, okay, this is really annoying. So I went home and I decided there and then that I would write a book, because at least someone would take notice of me. And I had been writing children's readers at that stage under another name, J. Dale. So I knew that I could write. So I wrote Some Secrets Should Never Be Kept, which was the first book. And we took that to 3 publishers. We went to 3 illustrators. Nobody wanted to publish it. So my partner, Mark, and I, we took out a loan and we decided this was a really important book and published it ourselves. So that was the beginning of Educate to Empower Publishing, and the beginning of my journey in this space of body safety and consent education.
Yeah, wow. I love people like you, Jay, where, you know, you see a problem and you go about, you change your whole world to go and fix it. And you create something that's, you know, that's filling a need that's necessary. And your books, I can only imagine. I recommend them so much that, you know, I recommend them on Instagram, on TikTok. I also recommend them to everyone I speak to because they are very well written books. And I've read on your website that you and your partner, Mark, were English teachers. Is that right?
Well, no, yes and no. I've actually been an early years primary school teacher. That's where I began my life as a teacher. But when we met at around 30, we actually went to Japan and we taught English in Japan.
That's cool.
But when we got, that was really cool. So Mark doesn't have a teaching background, but he did that anyway. And when we got back, because we had 1 daughter by then, I decided what I sort of did at that stage was a mix of education and publishing. So I'd think up ideas like a reader or a maths book or something, and then I would sort of sell it to a publisher.
Right.
So the teaching background has always been incredibly crucial in everything I do, particularly in these body safety and consent books that I do,
Yeah.
is every time I write a book, I have an objective in mind that I want the children, the learning that the child and the parent come away with. So it's,
Yeah.
you know, I often I don't, like, for example, with body safety, my body, what I say goes, I don't use rhyme because it's not going to be able to explain exactly what I need to say and the skills that I want those children to learn.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always have an educational teacher's hat on when I write my books.
I don't think there's no such thing as an ex-educator or teacher. You know, it's the same with my background in policing. You might be not in the job anymore, but you're always got that police lens.
Yeah.
Always got that teacher lens. You just can't stop, can you?
No. And I mean, once we wrote Some Secrets, then it was like, oh, you know, you've got to have a lesson plan with that. You can't just read a book. You've got to introduce it, and then you've got to unpack it, and then you've got to consolidate it with lessons. So that's how it sort of built on from the books, was with a lot of lesson plans as well.
So your initial plans with that book was to share it, or to have schools take it into their school lesson plans and share it. And I guess since you started writing all these books, body safety and protective behaviours education has become a major part of the curriculum in schools. My daughter was taught body safety. Yeah, thank goodness. And in actual fact, I think that because body safety and protective behaviours has been put into the curriculum, police have seen an increase in reports. The outcome for children is that we want them to be safe, right? So we just want them to have a safe home or a safe environment and a safe experience in their childhood. There's no other agenda there. So your books are amazing.
Oh, thank you. But I also think that, children, more than anything, more than even being loved in a way, need to be safe. I mean, this is a crucial thing, that they really need to feel safe with the adults that they're with. And it just stood out to me that there was a simple way of prevention education, because once, as you would know as a police officer, once a child has been abused, then, it is a long and really heartbreaking story in a way. Like, there will be healing, but when will they disclose? But we know prevention education is actually really quite simple. There's certain skills they need to learn. We teach them these skills in age appropriate ways, and hope that if they ever are touched inappropriately, that they'll speak up from that first inappropriate touch.
Yeah. And it can prevent so much. Like, we know that 30 to 50% of all child sexual abuse is done by another child, and the fact is that up until in the last 20 years, probably, let's say 20 years, maybe even longer, since protective behaviours and body safety education has started, we didn't talk about these things. So therefore a lot of things happened because kids didn't know better, or they didn't know different. Right. And so we're changing the future for our children by talking about these things. It's not, I know what you're talking about, that, when they like avoid talking about sort of certain topics, and it gets a bit like everyone's fidgety. I had a presentation to teachers yesterday, and I had a question about what type of sexual abuse becomes a statistic. And I was very frank. I was like, so are we talking about, penetration, or are we talking about indecent dealing? Like, like the teachers even felt uncomfortable with me going into detail about what type of what constitutes an actual child sexual abuse statistic. And I think that's the thing, we need to normalize these conversations so that we can be comfortable with them.
Absolutely. And I mean, we just have to put, like with those teachers, they have to put their adult fear of this topic aside, because it's about protecting those children that are looking at them every day in the classroom, and, stand up for them, be their warrior person who looks out for them, and face this. I mean, some adults even are too scared to say, vagina or penis, but that is becoming more normalized as well, that, that we call the private parts by their correct name. But yeah, some people are very uncomfortable with this topic, but I have seen a shift, I must say, since we started, like back in 2011. Like, when I took Some Secrets once to a local kinder, the woman said to me, the teacher said, get out of here with that book. Just get out of here with that book.
What?
It was incredible. So I have seen a massive swing. Now we have it in the curriculum here in Victoria, particularly.
Yeah.
We're always been quite ahead there.
Yes.
And we've got the child safety standards now. So like there is no excuse, and be the big person, look this topic in the face and protect children, basically.
Yeah. And I love that. So I've got more than the 2 books that I've got No Means No and My Body Set What I Say Goes, and I've got a couple of others, but I love that you've also now branched out into like inclusion and feelings and all of that. I mean, all of your books are behind you there, and like, body and consent and respect, because these are topics that we didn't talk about 20, 30 years ago. We didn't talk about it.
We didn't. And even with body safety, like we need to talk about feeling safe, feeling unsafe, feeling angry, like it all is part of the one sort of circle.
Yeah.
And like gender equality, I mean, that is one gender feeling like they have more power over another. So that's really important in this whole conversation as well, is gender equality. So
yeah,
sort of I love bringing those topics in. And we've done, I don't know if you know, we've done an Indigenous version of My Body, What I Say Goes.
yes.
And I'm working currently on one for kids with disability.
That's amazing, because as we know, kids living with a disability are 2.2, and I reckon it's higher than that,
Probably.
times more likely to be sexually abused or abused, because unfortunately, and in my experience in policing, we saw kids who they might be nonverbal, or they don't understand what's happening, and in actual fact, parents with children who are living with a disability are very cautious around teaching their kids about this stuff, whereas I feel that we should be ensuring that they're included in this education. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it'll be called My Body Safety Rules, and there are 7 rules. So in Victoria, I don't know in the other states, but I expect it's the same. When a carer works with a disabled child, they get a police check and they have a working with children.
Yep.
But they don't have to do any body safety or consent training. They don't have to use the language of consent.
Yep.
And it's a massive loophole that we have seen. So I thought, I'm going to do a book where the child is sort of in the book saying, these are my body safety rules.
Yeah.
And we would hope that when the carer comes and works with a person's child with a disability, they read that book before they even start the work.
Amazing.
To see this is how we interact and work, how we talk about our bodies with my child. So,
yeah, that's amazing, Jay, because I have had many a conversation with EAs, teachers, people working with children with disability, where they'll say, I'm actually concerned because these people, they think they're being helpful, but actually they're trying to help, but they're not actually considering the child's consent, their body autonomy.
Yeah.
All of these things, and that's actually a concern for me. And so what we also need to, from my police lens, we need to also remember that we need to consider those things, because that's protecting the child, but you also got to protect yourself as in that situation.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if the governments or whatever are not putting mandatory training in place. So, for example, your neighbour with a police check and working with children can come and look after your disabled child. Now, do they know to ask, oh, can I move your leg? Is that okay? No, they don't. And so you really don't know what's going on. And I think it's a massive loophole. So hopefully this is just me, again, getting a bit cross.
I love that you see it.
How can I
help? How can I make this better? How can we start this conversation? How can we educate people so that they will do better? Like, it's not about, shaming or blaming people for not doing because when you don't know, right? But when you know better, you should do better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's good.
And getting onto the, working with children check and the police check, it's only, here's the loophole. If someone hasn't been caught, doing the wrong thing, then anyone can get it. It's just a matter of whether you've been caught or not. And unfortunately, in my experience, there's a lot of people out there with those working with children checks and police checks, and they haven't been caught until someone says something, someone speaks up.
And, I think we know that perpetrators go where children are. And yes, we know there's a lot of online grooming, and, we know that online can be a very dangerous place for children. But I don't think we can, we've got to keep our eye on the ball. There still are the perpetrators out there who are seeking out children.
100%.
And yeah, they will go where the children are.
Well, interestingly, it's about 2.75 times more likely. So a person, who are attracted to children are 2.75 times more likely to work with children, because like you said, they're more likely, they're going to seek out jobs where it puts them in contact with children. They're going to go. And, I speak about this on other podcasts, children, that we can't identify them by look, smell, what they wear, what car they drive. We just need to make sure that we're, first of all, being protective, supervising children with people that we don't know, and ensuring our children have protective behaviours education and body safety education.
Absolutely. That's what we should do as adults, teachers, parents, grandparents, just as I said, put that fear aside and educate our children in prevention education. And as you said, a lot of your police officers now are finding kids are disclosing more.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've heard anyway, that in the last 5 or so years, children are coming forward and disclosing a lot more than they did in the past. And that could, I think that comes down to education.
1,000%.
Having that power to say, well, that is wrong. I know that. I've been told that. Now I need to speak up. Even we know that, kids are obviously going to freeze as an adult would, but that doesn't mean you can't practice the skills of body safety. Like, it's just like wearing a seatbelt, right? You put a seatbelt on your child and you hope you never have to use it, but it's there just in case. Well, teaching your child body safety and saying, no, stop, this is my body, it's empowering, and it's there just in case. And they always know the defaults. If they can't do that, or they feel too scared or frightened, is to tell a trusted adult straight away, like go and tell an adult straight away. So, our responsibility as adults, as safe adults and teachers, is to educate ourselves around, the grooming and the statistics and how to teach body safety. That's our role. And then it's to impart that knowledge to the children and hope they come to us.
Yeah, and my experience in this space, obviously with investigating child sexual abuse as well as interviewing children, is the children who had protective behaviours or body safety education were quicker to speak up and were quicker to, and in actual fact, I found from talking to child sex offenders or convicted child sex offenders, is the children who show signs of being confident and having a trusted adult and showing signs of, would go and tell an adult, they will more likely leave them alone.
Absolutely. And that's another point. When the child, if they're using the correct names for their private parts, like, the perpetrator is going to go, oh, okay, this kid is educated to tell. And I have a poster called My Body Safety Rules, which is free. You've probably seen it. It's in 24 different languages. But even that poster on your refrigerator in your house sends a very clear message to anyone coming into your house that these kids are educated to tell. And what are they going to hate the most? When the child doesn't keep the secret, when the child tells.
Yeah. Well, and they're, and in my experience, they're cowards, hence, preying on children. So they are going to go for the path of least resistance, the path of a child that doesn't have a supportive parent, doesn't have open communication, isn't talking about this stuff, isn't teaching this stuff. That's the child that they want, that they're going to have more likelihood of preying upon. And it's a scary subject. It's a scary thought process. But I can tell you now, those kids that have that are so much better off. Prevention is where I put my focus. Prevention is where you're putting your focus. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I can't help a child after the fact, but I can do prevention. And like you can too, and we'll continue to do that because it's just so important. And and why I provide books and resources is because they're great vehicles for unpacking these scary topics. So, if you're a parent, you're going to go, oh my God, where do I start? What do I say? But if you've got a book that you can sit down with, children are visual learners, they can have discussions. And I find also through books and, my books and other people's books, that discussion does happen. And then, you're having these discussions when you're like 3, 4, 5, these open discussions about what's going on in their lives, how they're feeling, all that sort of stuff. That's going to be great when they're teenagers. They're going to be more likely to come to you because they've been having these ongoing discussions around these topics. And I just think it's a really lovely vehicle to unpack tricky topics.
Yeah, and I think most parents don't, we don't have children with the whole, we think about that baby, we think about, we don't think about what we need to do, for the next 18 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years.
That's right.
I became very aware of this, and my daughter's, nearly 16. Over the last 10 years, it was so much easier when she was little. But the one thing that I did, because I was educated in protective behaviours when I became a specialist child interviewer, and I saw how absolutely vital it is in child abuse prevention, child sexual abuse prevention, I started that conversation. And like you said, I have the most absolutely amazing conversations around every topic you can think of. Not to embarrass her or anything, but there's no topic is not discussed in our family.
Yeah, and she will come to you if she's concerned about something, and you've given her that empowerment to come, about consent. You've talked about her, so that she can stand up for herself. She has rights, and if anything does worry or upset her, she's sure to come to you because she knows that you'll talk about anything. Nothing is off the table. And I think these kind of conversations, so it's sort of like, well, yes, you're unpacking body safety and consent and feelings and gender equality, and that's amazing. But you're also, developing this bond between you where you really are their safe person, and you can say, look, nothing's going to shock me. And often in my books, I will have a question like, has anyone ever made you feel unsafe? Or who are the people on your safety network? So they can just have these conversations rather than just read a book.
Yes.
There's a lot more in there to help the learning, I suppose. So
I
understand it.
I'm so grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you.
I'm grateful because you've taken that stress out of it. These are beautifully written, beautifully illustrated books that have taken a lot of stress out of it. So, it makes so much sense. And like I said, I'm just disappointed I didn't have them when my daughter was little to be able to, if I could turn back time, it would be so great to have had them. But, the best thing is they're going to be there for when my daughter has children. And
indeed. And hopefully one day she may never need them, but she will probably. There's always going to be, perpetrators, sadly. But with the Little Big Chat series, which are those little books, you probably
the little readers.
Them.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt that for the 2 to 6 year olds, we really needed to break it down into small pieces.
Yeah.
Rather than have a book with lots of skills, like we could talk about private parts of private, secrets and surprises, and just make it into sort of chunk it into smaller pieces. So because we can start these conversations from a very early age, we should. Yeah, we absolutely should.
No, that's perfect, because you don't realize and children are sponges, right? They're just sponging up every bit of information, everything we say, everything we do, and there's no perfect way to do all this stuff, but having something, a little guide, those Little Big Chats are amazing little books for those younger kids. So what's next for you? Have you got any big plans? I know that you've got so much on the go all the time.
I think I am really focusing on, I hope to get Kaya's edition, which is the Indigenous version. It's been illustrated by Jasmine Seymour. So I really would love if we can get that out into more Indigenous communities. It's similar information, obviously, nearly exactly, but the Indigenous kids will identify with the images because it has been illustrated by an Indigenous artist. And then, of course, I've got the special needs book, so I'm very excited about that. So they'll come out next year. And then I have another little special book that's coming out. It's called Love Little One. So that's my gift to people who are having children, and the kinds of things I would like them to gift their children, if you know what I mean. Like it starts with, welcome little one into my arms, I'll keep you safe from harm. So it's those kinds of
that sounds beautiful.
Verses. Yeah, it is pretty cute. And it'll be, like, just, I always start with a word like welcome or care or be kind, all the things that I'd like parents to be able to think about for their children as they're growing up.
Sounds like the perfect gift for a newborn parent or a
yeah.
I ask everyone before we finish up the podcast, because when I was writing my book and I kept thinking, if parents knew what I knew, they would do things differently. And that was my, like, if everyone knew what I knew, I just wish everyone knew what I knew, but can't do that. So if parents knew what you knew, or if is there one bit of information or one bit of wisdom that you could impart with parents about what you know and what you want them to know?
Look, I really do think it is about being that warrior person for children, and not thinking about, oh my God, I'm so fearful of this topic, but putting that aside, because, every time you hear the news, there is something about a child being sexually abused or sexual abuse of children. So this goes on. So you need to put that fear of this topic aside and understand that you're not actually going to be talking about the act of sexual abuse. Like when you do road safety, you don't show children graphic images. When you teach water safety, you don't say, well, this is how you're going to drown. Like, you don't show graphic images. So understand that what you're doing in preventive education is age appropriate, but my God, it is so powerful, as we know. And not only is it powerful for your child, but we know that a lot of children will tell their friend. So if your child knows that, that touching their private parts or people wanting to photograph their private parts is inappropriate, and their friend comes to them and tells them that someone is doing that to them, then your child knows they need to tell. So it's like a ripple effect. When you educate your child and put your fear aside, it ripples out into the community. And I think we all have our part to play. And parents, you have a big part to play in this, as our teachers do. And and look, I think educate yourself on grooming. Statistics are frightening. And when you see those things, you'll know to put your fears aside and educate your child.
Yeah, educate yourself and educate your child. Yeah, so true. It's a question that's actually been plaguing me right now, is that why are some parents very proactive and want to do everything they possibly can, and why do some parents are scared and put their head in the sand and just like, not my child, not my, it's not going to happen to us, and not do anything. And I think that's good advice. Like, put your fears aside and realize that by doing this, you're actually doing, like, it's a life-saving skill. These are life-saving skills.
And also, I mean, like, I think the biggest fear people have is that you are going to talk about the act of sexual abuse. But you're actually not. You're just saying you have a body boundary. This is your personal space. No one touches your private parts. They're just for you. It's very simple messaging. Yeah. It's nothing about the actual act. So if parents could just understand that it's a positive message, an empowering message that you're giving, not a frightening one, then they would be much more likely to take their head out of the sand and educate their kids in this space.
I think you're right. I think it's been plaguing me. That question's been plaguing me. Why are we so scared? And some people think that by talking about something, it encourages children to, like, it brings it into their universe, into their world. But in this space, in what I've seen and what I've heard, there is no such thing as being too prepared, too preventative. there's no such thing. Because you've probably the same, Jay, you've probably heard stories of survivors where they just wish someone had told them.
From that first inappropriate touch, they'd known it was wrong.
Yeah.
How different their lives would have been. How different. And people would still be here if they'd known. So it's, we know, you and I both know that the message to children is simple. Like, you literally could have that poster with the 5 body safety rules. And if parents couldn't afford books or whatever, and you could just go through those 5 rules. And I think even that would be enough for a child to go, oh, okay, that wasn't right. I feel my early warning, I feel sick about this. I have to tell the safe person, the trusted person.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you feel like pulling your hair out, don't you, Rose? But
Definitely. I'll share in the show notes that link to that free poster so that people can put it on their fridge. And I really encourage people to check out Jay's website. But Jay, where can people find you if they want to pick up a book or connect with you or whatever?
Well, it is very interesting because we really only sell our books through word of mouth and social media. So very few bookshops take our books. So it's E2E publishing.info. And as you know, Kristi, I have lots of free stuff there. I give away a lot of free posters and things. So even if people can't afford the books, go there for the posters or ask your library. Yeah. And if they don't have the books, they have to get them. So
ask them to get them in. Yeah. E2E stands for Educate to Empower. So just for anyone, so that's like prompts them to remember. And that's, so there's some beautiful books. My Body What I Say Goes, like I've got the older version, you've got a newer version.
Yes.
And No Means No, and like so many different things, all of the books that your child needs basically and so you can have those beautiful, open, safe conversations around this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Jay.
You are most welcome. So lovely to talk to you.
It is. And we'll catch up soon.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. Education empowers children and empowers parents, and education prevents abuse. That is why I'm here, and that is why you are here. So thank you. If you want any further information or support, follow me on social media, either under Kristi McVie or Cape AU social media accounts. I'll put the links in the show notes. You can also purchase a signed copy of my book, Operation Kids Safe, via the website at www.cape-au.com. Also on my website is a free ebook titled 10 Tips to Keep Your Kids Safe from Abuse, and self-paced courses for parents to help you in your journey of child abuse prevention. Don't forget to join our free Facebook group called Operation Kids Safe Parenting Group. Please see the show notes for any extra information, links and help should you be looking for extra support. Thank you once again for giving a shit about preventing child sexual abuse. See you next time.